program and this conversation is about what happens when you get triggered. It could be a scent, a smell, a motion, a movement, something that is just comes out of nowhere and it flashes out of your mouth or you react physically, perhaps. I'll never forget Zizou, soccer player, midfielder, most famous midfielder, got his red card at the last game because the player insulted his mother, and that was a hardcore subconscious trigger for him. Point being that these are the moments that you can use to both free yourself and unblock a whole lot of energy that's stuck in that, but also shift your leadership. So we're talking with Miranda Rocci Tricelli. I hope I said that.
Yeah, you're close. Rocca Tricelli.
Rocca Tricelli. Okay. Miranda has written a book about transcendence using triggers, which is pretty much outstanding because if there's one thing that sets us apart from AI and everything else, it is the emotional richness that humans bring. So I want to go to you, Miranda, and let's talk about what you've learned from triggers and just how did that come about? What's the story behind going on this journey? Because a lot of people need to go on it. It would help them a lot, but don't necessarily recognize it as an opportunity.
And also maybe even just the fear of the pain, right? Because often the pain of healing, as we know, is greater than the pain of the incident itself that you're dealing with. So for me, it was really just going through life, questioning things. I have 3 children, going through those stages of motherhood. And in the work I was doing, it's just, I was reading all these books. I even read religious texts. I've read so many different just works trying to better understand what's our meaning, what's our purpose. How do we get to that place where we're that best version of ourselves and we're the healthiest version? And it was just like, there was always something missing in the content and the messaging where it was just be happy or just meditate or just go in this direction. And what I've learned is that it's so easy to make those statements, but ultimately what people lack is the ability and the know to how to. So if for myself, when people said just be happy, I said, what if I don't know how to be happy? What if I don't know how to identify with happiness to the degree that I can just embody it when something's happening or I'm challenged? When it's not something you can just be, then the discovery of, excuse me, all the layers that bring us to that place of, okay, so then what does happiness look like and how do I get there? So, and that was a journey in itself. And of course, always cautious with what you ask for with the universe, because learning about happiness will take you down some you'll go through the depths of the valley before you can even get close to climbing the mountain. And so what I learned in this process and through studying different methodologies was that humans need a very simple, logical process to follow. And when we look at spiritual science, the bridge from emotional work and neuroscience, there's still always that gap where we still try to, I feel, keep things segregated with science and spirituality. But the truth is, there is a way to bridge it. And I think we can take healing and create simple processes that people can adopt and they can practice. So what I did is I started to trial and error and create a process to say, okay, if I don't know how to get there, then what are the steps I need to take to get to that place where I can just be happy or just meditate or just this and that? And again, through studying different methodologies, I realized that I came to this place and this awareness of it starts with a trigger. And what I came to understand is that trigger is, like you said, it's something you're dealing with, and it could be a scent, it could be an experience, it could be a person, it could be a sound, it could be anything that you've experienced that you've connected to. And usually those triggers are past wounds that we haven't healed, and they're unhealed, and they're just sitting there just between the subconscious and the consciousness. And then it's like, as soon as someone hits that chink, it's like we implode, and we often get stuck in what we're dealing with right in that moment, but it never has to actually do with that moment, that person, it takes you back to that past wound. And so as I started to work through that, and again, just different methodologies and understanding how to acknowledge emotions and work through that process, I created a 6-step process that, again, is comes from reason and logic, where people can just take the step, understand it, but then there's that spiritual healing involved with it as they work through each of the steps. And so I just started practicing it, and I started sharing it with people, and mostly in my own life, and it was just constantly tweaking it, fixing it, asking different questions until I got to that place where I knew this could transform someone instantly, even just by going through the flow chart of going through these 6 steps. Because once you identify what the trigger is, you've uncovered an unhealed wound that you've been carrying for your entire life, and you've brought it to the surface. That's awareness. Now you can't unsee it. And so now the process that takes you through, now what do we do with it? So it's here. So I take people through that process of acknowledging it, and then honoring it for what it served you, and then rebuilding it and reprogramming your subconscious so that now, and the test of time is always when you find yourself in a similar situation, you're either not as triggered, you're more aware, and you're like, wait a second, last time that really bothered me and I went down this spiral, and this time I feel a little bit more grounded. And so the more you continuously do it, because sometimes you have to dig out a trigger like a weed 20 times before it's gone, right? Or before it's healed and you've transcended it. So it's a phenomenal process. And like anything, once you get used to doing it, I can do it instantaneously now, where it's like, oh, there's the trigger. Oh, yeah, there's the past event. Oh, there's the belief. And now let's pre-program it. So like anything, it becomes innate, but and like you said, this is the work that most people don't want to do, because this is the hardest work. It's feeling the old pain that we don't want to feel, that the strongest of humans will run from, because sitting with our pain is the hardest thing that we can do. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the choice people make. It's I don't want to deal with my pain, so I'm going to sit with it instead.
Yeah, so I'm going to suppress it and make it worse, right?
Yeah,
And that's what we do. It's like I say, it's like holding a ball underwater. You can try to push that ball down, but eventually it's going to pop up and hit you in the face, and you can't control when that's going to happen, right? And so that's why often these triggers are such beautiful things, because if you don't catch them, we've all had those mental breakdowns, an anxiety attack, and it starts with a trigger. Something triggers you, and then you get to the point where you're at max capacity and you can't navigate anymore. And so this is preventative, right?
Preventative and also liberating, because if you've got all that baggage stored in your subconscious, it's going to pop out when you don't want it to, which is usually with something new in your world. Yeah. And you're trying to shift and you keep ending up back where you started. It's like, what the heck is going on here? And it's what's going on is you've got you've got a system running that's doing all by itself. So it drives your results, and it drives your results in business as well. So it's the subconscious of a company as well. I think there's a fractal element to that. Certainly I've seen that in the work that I've done.
Absolutely.
The other thing I've observed, and I appreciate your take on it, but I've observed that when you're clearing triggers out like that, the trigger will be one aspect of a memory, and that there's more to it. And that's why it takes a while, because you're going, okay, here's the car accident, and then there's the moment where it hit, and there's the moment where I realized it was going. There's a lot of pieces
There's layers
to it
too, right? And that's why I say often people have to go back and revisit that trigger if they find themselves in a similar situation where they're like, oh, like I'm still triggered here. Like you said, there's so many layers to it, where every time you do it, you peel back one layer. And what I also find is often, like when we're trying to identify an old belief system, I never just find one, right? It's like you start, and then you're like, okay, you were rejected from a job, or that's your experience. That's a trigger, not getting the job you want. You kind of work through that. You're like, oh, past experience. And again, the furthest back you can go, if you can go to your earliest childhood memories, that's where the gold is. And that's where a lot of us carry our trauma, right? So if you can go as far back and say, oh, yeah, that's that belief of not feeling good enough. It's not rejection. It's just not being chosen, not being seen, not being heard. And then when you go to your beliefs, it's like, sometimes I list 20 of them, because it's as I'm doing the work, all these old beliefs. Okay, I'm not good enough. Girls finish last. You have to start at the bottom. You start finding all these lists of beliefs. So you're right. There's so many layers to it. And that's why this isn't ever a one-time thing where it's like you get to your goal, you've healed that one trigger. Oh, I'm good. I don't have to do anything. It's like getting to your ideal weight, and then you're like, great, I don't have to work out ever again. It doesn't work like that, right? It's a lifestyle. And so it is a big commitment, because in a day you could be triggered a million times over. So it also could become overwhelming, because I find when you kind of crack open Pandora's box, it's like, oh my God, all these triggers, I need to heal them all. And I tell people, just be gentle, because once you open those floodgates, you start to notice, and that self-awareness increases and your vibration increases, where you're like, wow, okay, trigger, they're everywhere. But it's just the paying attention.
Yeah, and layers and onions. And then, of course, I come up with parfaits. They have layers too. So it's just one of those things you start
those are tastier layers.
Start peeling it off. I'm going to tell a story, because I was asked to work with a young woman who had been kidnapped in Mexico. She's Mexican, but she'd been kidnapped. And the way the car had come up, they had cut across in front of their car, and these guys had come out and so she was in a trunk of the car for 3 days. And so my job was to teach her to drive. The reason why they wanted me to do it is because I had been working with somebody who knew a breathwork methodology of eliciting these triggers and releasing them. And what happened was, for her, not when she was with me, but when somebody would come up fast beside her, she just froze. It was an anxiety.
Yeah.
And there were a bunch of different aspects to how that event took place that stuck with her. And we just breathed, did the breath work every time. And the charge just kept going down and down until she could drive and not be triggered by this other stuff.
That's it. And that's what I mean. One experience has so many triggers, right? And that's it. And sometimes depending on where you're resonating or where you're vibrating that day, one trigger might just implode you versus another trigger. And it's just this, and it's not static, right? Because every day you wake up, you go through different things. There's going to be different triggers that are present, and they're always present. And that's it, is that you can't predict what triggers are going to go off, or it's so unconscious for so many of us that you have to start with the trigger. To me, that is the first point. It's, oh, I'm triggered. Okay. And I tell people, when you start, don't even go further than the first step. Just start, get a notepad and old school or your phone, and start paying attention. Oh, I was triggered today. Just note the emotion that was triggered. That's the most important thing, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So if you can say, okay, that triggered anger versus that one triggered shame, or that one triggered guilt, identifying the emotional state is probably almost halfway there in essence, because most people don't identify with emotions. It's just this ambiguous thing. You're happy or sad, but they don't look at the spectrum and say, no, this specifically triggered anger. Because if you can identify the emotion, it helps you bring back the old wound or the old experience, because usually it goes into a bucket with the trauma, right? So I try to teach, and I have that in my book, and I go through, and I use the work of Dr. David Hawkins with the map of consciousness, right? And I help people understand that emotions are calibrated energy sources, that they can be measured and calibrated in hertz. So it's not just some random thing, we're dealing with energy here. And so when you're triggered, when you can learn to identify the emotional state and then alchemize it and be in control by working through a process that connects with that emotion, brings out the old junk that you've been carrying on and heals it and allows you to implement a new process, you're transcending, right? You're raising your frequency. And that's the most important part, because you started off angry and now you've risen your frequency to potentially courage to say, no, you know what? Now I can do this. I can take this on, or whatever it is, right? And it's, so people have to understand that it's not just, we were taught they're just emotions. And most people's emotions run their lives, which is most people, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't control it and you don't also understand the emotional state behind triggers, it's going to be really hard. But once you get that, it almost becomes this real life game of, okay, yeah, here's the anger. And you stop self-victimizing yourself. You pull yourself out of apathy, because you almost become an expert in you, where you're like, oh yeah, that triggered shame. And it becomes objective versus you get caught in that trigger and that feeling, right? And I find when you have a process too, it helps just direct you, right? You won't stay in a place where you normally would. It just, okay, I've done step one, I've gone with that, now move on to step two. And I just find it's a very practical process. And if you make things easy, it's one layer less that people have to navigate.
Yeah, absolutely true. Yeah. And just on triggers, I'm strong and sensitive. So most sensitive people get hammered on, or strong people get hammered on because they don't think they're sensitive. And so what's interesting is you can walk into a room and trigger people because you're strong in your sense of self. And if they're not, they get triggered. And so it's one of those things where you go, oh my gosh, where can I hide? And which I did for a long time until, and one of my close friends and branding expert initially branded me as an evolutionary provocateur, because you couldn't really be in my space and not evolve.
Yeah, stimulating.
It totally annoying if you really didn't want to grow or evolve your consciousness or your state of being. Then I'm a trigger constantly. And
but what a good lesson to see that the impact we have on people and the impact we have on ourselves.
Yeah, it wasn't a fun lesson initially. It was just like, what the heck's going on here? People blowing up and you're like, what? But eventually when you figure it out, you, oh, okay, because you start doing the work yourself. And as you start doing the work yourself, you find, there's a parallel here and a pattern as well. And so as the pattern surfaces, you think, okay, now I can see you clearly.
Well, and that's kind of like the catch-22 is the more, and I truly believe you can only take people to the depths you're willing to take yourself. So as you heal, you naturally increase your vibration, like you said, and then it's a situation where, you don't fit into, I can't walk into as many rooms as I used to, and there's a different interaction that occurs. And the more you start learning about yourself and healing yourself, the more you see in others, and more from a compassionate, you become the observer. So you're observing, not absorbing, right? And
Yeah,
like you
yeah, it's
said,
a great line.
yeah, so and it's just, so you're there. And now what used to impact me before I had this knowledge was exactly what you mentioned, where I would just get bombarded and overwhelmed and I didn't even want to go into certain spaces. But then once you start to realize that, yeah, you're in control, and how it lands with people, that's based on their healing, right? So the triggers that I've often healed, I'm sure I walk in a room and other people can vibrate with parts of that, but I can't control that part, right? So what I control now is more what energy I'm putting out and how it lands with people. You can turn on a burner, you could put your hand on it, or you could put a pot on it. The options are there for people. And so it is different now when I interact with the world. I find I am more cautious, more self-aware, but it also lets me see the good in people. I see people's trauma just from doing this work and understanding trauma. And I'm sure that resonates with you, where you
Hmm.
often connect with people's trauma. And what it does for me, it builds more compassion, right? It creates a safe space of, even if someone's throwing stones at you, I can look at them and see their trauma and understand why they're doing it and know that it's not personal, which is way less draining than going into a room and being stoned and taking it completely personal, not because you want to, but again, not knowing how to not take it personal.
Yeah.
And most people will say, oh, I don't take anything personal. Usually those are the people that take it the most personal, because there's, again, you just are able to read and connect with people differently when you do this type of healing, right? And yeah, it doesn't let you go into every room, but it ends up, you're more in control in the rooms that you do walk into.
What's interesting in these conversations, somebody said to me, people are afraid of their emotions. There's a fear of emotion. And I thought, oh my gosh. So you're one step closer to being a robot under those conditions. Like somebody else could take over the feeling part because
100%.
AI can do the thinking part. So this, to me, this is the podium for managing oneself as you move forward in the world we're in today. You've got to do that work. And I remember Mary O'Hara DeVroe she's a futurist, and she wrote a book called Navigating the Badlands in 2004. It was published. And she said, oh, all right, you executives, you have to go and open those skeletons in your closet, give them a big warm hug and get to know them. And then you can get into this new world we're in. That was right on time, 20 years
Yeah.
ago. And here we are. And I don't know how many of those execs, or anybody else for that matter, any decision maker, has done that inner work, but that's the work to be done. That's for sure.
And that's the tricky part, is that the work is there. But again, it's the one thing that even the most heroic people in this world, they run from that pain. And I understand it. And learning how to sit with my pain, I didn't understand that. And when I started to take it seriously and said, okay, like, how do I sit with my pain? Because it's part of my process too. And it's implemented from Dr. David Pearson's too. Again, like, the only way to heal and raise the frequency of something, you absolutely have to acknowledge it and sit with it and allow it to run through you, right? So spending a week sitting in shame on and off, it was the most uncomfortable thing in the world. And I understand why people avoid it. It's, you feel like your skin, you just want to rip it off, because it's just this, and it's just an emotion.
Yeah.
And so once you realize, like, these are just feelings, like, these are completely in my control. It's like doing a gruesome workout. Like, I know what I'm expecting when I'm triggered and I need to sit with an emotion, but ultimately I know what comes out of it. And then as you continue to do it in small steps, you start to realize, oh my God, like, I'm starting to see the results. And going into a room where you are in control of your emotional state, you cannot be manipulated. And like you say, when you resonate at a lower frequency, and you don't have those triggers in order, you are 100% manipulated. You can be manipulated by anyone and any, because you're not in touch with your emotional states. You're not managing and alchemizing that energy. You're allowing others to control it. So to be in a room and to have that sovereignty of, no, I'm aware, I'm in control of my emotional states, and create that space for yourself, like, it's such a game changer. And even just the confidence that you're able to walk into a room once you do that healing. But I understand the pain that you have to sit with to get there. So it's a tough one, but I will always be a proponent of heal. That's why we're here. I think our purpose is to raise our frequency, and you can only do that through healing. And that's how we remember who we really are. We're supposed to be high vibrating beings that are capable of crazy healing abilities. And I think we've lost our way. If my book is a reminder for people to remember who they are and what they're capable of, I hope it does that, because again, I try to simplify things. If people even just read through it and they don't do it, you still get the energetic frequency of healing. So you're still
Mm.
doing more than nothing, right?
Yeah. Well, you're reminding me of I wrote my first book in '04. or '03, I guess it was. And it was based on my facilitation techniques, but it applied to myself and my own personal growth. And then I had to calibrate it to David Hawking's scale of
That's cool.
consciousness, and with a chiropractor who was from Eastern Europe. And so he understood that idea fluently. And we used muscle testing and we
Yeah.
calibrated it. And I thought, okay, that's cool. But then I didn't really know what that meant. And then I gave the book away a lot because I don't know whether,
Yeah, we do that.
yeah, we just do with it. Anyway, and this one individual came back and he said, I read it two or three times. And he said, all of a sudden I realized I hated myself. So there was an epiphany that came out of just reading that kind of perspective that didn't talk about that directly at all. It was just enough to say it's safe to acknowledge your state of being. You don't have to do anything more than that. Just say, there it is. And once you've seen it, then the methodology you're talking about, that can deal with it. Do that work, get rid of that because it's just annoying and slowing you down. And now today it has a huge impact on mental and emotional health. So
And it's very subconscious, like you said, like when you go into the science of it and what Dr. David Hawkins explains, like again, there's a frequency associated with it, right? And I say people, it's not even the book or the words, it's the frequency. So immediately, if you connect with that frequency in whatever shape or form, it's already gonna. And what happens with that when people, the whole connection piece is basically you synergize your frequencies, right? So if the book's vibrating here and you're here, and in order to connect with it, somehow this has to find its way to an equilibrium where now you're connected. And to create something, like you said, that's calibrated at a level that people actually have to rise their frequency without even knowing it. It's very subconscious, but they get there. To be part of that healing journey is just such a phenomenal experience because you know scientifically that their vibration is increasing. Yeah, there's no faking that.
And it's liberating. Let's just name it. It's
Absolutely.
liberating. And there is the option of being afraid of your emotions and saying, I want to avoid my pain. And then there's the option that says, hey, I can see that closet, the skeletons in the closet. I'm going to bring them out, get to know them, and then liberate those energetic charges that go with that. You keep the memory, but skip the charge. And that right now puts you in charge. It puts you back in having a sense of control over your life, over what you want. And it's not that you're going to go out there and go and get it. That was the mystery or the delusion around law
You
of
usually don't even
attraction.
want it because it's the state, the experience, and the feeling that you're looking for. So I find often when you get to that place of feeling as though you resonate with having it already, that's why you get it because you're not resisting it anymore. You're one with it, right? But it's still such a hard thing, I think, for people to understand. And that's where I think looking at different modalities, and it works for everyone. But for me, it's to be able to dig out old trauma and consciously so that you have the tools. So anywhere you are to be triggered and be like, I've got the solution. It's in me and I can work through this process, right? To me, that is so empowering. And we need more of that.
Yeah, it is. In the past, what we've done is people will go to therapists, which is, if that's your thing, go there, psychology. But some of us are private enough and misunderstood enough or misinterpreted enough that you just go, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
You don't fit in a box.
No, I'm not a good box fitter at all. So
No,
let's just guide myself through this. And it works. People say you can't do that. You can. You can be very discerning. And that's the other skill set, that business of discernment. You can't access that if you're in a binary black and white world. But when you start working with your emotions at a deeper level, like we're talking about here, everything gets much richer and your perception becomes clearer. So you're not blindsided by stuff that was sitting right in front of you the whole time. You can actually see things with a greater degree of clarity. And I find that in today's world, it's so freeing and so peaceful, very peaceful.
Well, yeah. And in a world where control is constantly being taken from us and we're in a place of force, we're being pushed and corralled into certain directions to be able to have that feeling of being sovereign just for a moment, it is incredibly empowering because, again, it's remembering we are sovereign beings. When society has obviously changed that or influenced otherwise. So to be able to, and you mentioned something really beautiful is that you motivate yourself, you have the discipline to do it. And I think until it's like anything, until people see the proof in the pudding in their lives, it's hard for them to do. And I'm much like you, I can coach myself. And I don't ever recommend people doing that because I just think that when you've built a certain character and I know I can take myself deeper than anyone and I will do those extra 5 push-ups, but I've had to get to the place where I'm doing this for myself because I know if I push myself and I ask those hard questions and I answer them, like you said, the freeing, the sovereignty, the goal that comes out of that. It's like working out and saying you're your own coach. Yeah, often you'll be like, oh, I'm done early today. It's a hard thing for people to get there.
Yep.
But once they do get there, it is, again, incredibly free. Know that you don't have to rely on anyone for your own healing. You can do it completely within your own capacity and without
And some
ego.
And sometimes it helps to have somebody who's really annoying, like a constructive irritant. I thought I saw that terminology. Wasn't I am that,
Yeah.
but that person that doesn't give up on you, that sort of says, "Yeah," and then there's this, and it's that place where you go, "Oh, okay, that's exactly what a fitness coach would do. The sports coach, they would say, "Yeah, you only did 5, you can do 10 or 20 or whatever, and maintain your quality in doing them." And so that's what
A
helps.
healthy
But
push, right?
exactly, exactly. Just that healthy little nudge to say you're not done yet. There's more exciting stuff
There's
ahead.
more.
Yeah,
And
and
there will be pain too, and that's okay, right? It's
yeah,
in it. And that's the thing. People often think when you get to a place, and I created my book in 3 parts. The first part was the journey, going through the things that we're talking about, life and how I dealt with it. And then the second part's the methodology, and then the third part's the integration, because that's the part. This is a lifestyle. This isn't something I do every now and then. It's a lifestyle. It's every day waking up and it's going through a process, working, healing, and being the best I can be so that I could be sovereign and create that space for others. But it's so important to do this and to create a lifestyle out of it, because when it becomes your everyday, it's not as taxing. And the thing is, the storms don't stop coming. Often people think, okay, I'm healed, everything's gonna be great, yeah, I'm gonna hang out in the clouds today. It doesn't work like that. In fact, the storms still come. You just now know how to navigate them in a healthy and, like you said, freeing way, where before they would have taken you out. So the storms come and you even get excited sometimes for the storms, and you're like, oh, cool, okay, what's this gonna yeah, I know I'm gonna get out of this. Let's see what I'm gonna learn, right? So the storms still come, the challenges are still there, the problematic people still show up, and the triggers are still there too. But I find what happens is they're not as loud anymore.
yeah,
They're more
yeah, they need
subtle. Yeah, they're there and you can notice them. And then once you start noticing, because I find as humans, we need to be yelled at sometimes. The universe will yell at us if we have not been listening. So when you get to that place where you've healed, the yelling stops and it's more of a gentle, oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. You get the odd, holy shit, okay, got to sit down with that one. Didn't know that one was still there. So,
it.
but every day you have to be conscious of those triggers, and it has to be part of your lifestyle and your life cycle. It has to be integrated if you really want to get to that sovereign place where you vibrate incredibly high. This is the type of commitment that's required. Or if you just want to do it a little bit, again, it never hurts, right? But I've written it for different levels of healing.
One thing that I've noticed, well, in my early days, I've been doing this kind of work for 30 something years. Just I decided when my daughter was born that I was going to be the best person I could be. And of course, that sets you on that. You say something like that, and
That's
it's
how
like,
it all started.
wham. I say, okay, do this then, and here's this, and what about that?
So you're
But
reparenting yourself and your children. Yeah, that's the best
it,
process.
it is. And what I love about what you've done is that you know, the freeing and the liberation you do also for your kids. So the
Absolutely.
kids now understand it's okay to learn from the
And it's
past. It's
okay
so,
to feel. It's okay to
yeah,
heal. It's all of it.
yeah. And it's
It's
okay to define yourself, not on the basis of what's happened to you in the past, but on the basis of where you see yourself going in the future and just being present with
absolutely.
it. So
Hmm.
you can be present with the world and yourself, most
Hmm.
importantly. The number of people during COVID, for example, that were not keen on being with their own company have triggers up
Oh,
the wazoo.
absolutely.
No,
Absolutely. And that was obviously that was so many layers in itself. But if you, and that was a great challenge, if you can stay with yourself and enjoy your company and then the company of the people that you were kind of stuck with, yeah, what a challenge, right? And what an
yeah,
opportunity to go inside and look within. But it's interesting you said that too, because motherhood is what started it with me too. And that was exactly it. It was, I didn't want to recreate the relationship I had. So I have these little kids and you're getting triggered every moment of every day. And you're like, holy shit, how am I going to make it out of this? And eventually it was like, how do I become the best version of myself? Because everything that's in my cup right now, I'm going to spill into my children's cups. And they're going to take it. And then they're going to grow up one day and question themselves and have to do the healing work that I'm doing. So that was probably the hardest thing to do, was to almost remove myself at one point and recognize that I had trauma and then start healing it, because they were the motivation. It was, I don't want to traumatize another generation. So how do I stop this? And that's probably the greatest feat, I think, as a woman I've ever, is to shift and heal that generational trauma. And
Yeah.
it was intense, right? And I think that's, again, it's in the book, and that was part of the journey of figuring out, remembering who I am. And I have
Yeah.
a beautiful, now that they're teenagers, which is always, I think, the test of time of when your kids are teenagers and if they still want you around. I feel like I have a great relationship with them, but it was a full-time job to heal so that I didn't pour that into their cup. And
Yeah, that's
it was
well
hard.
said. One of the things that I observed early on when I first started this personal development growth journey was self-discovery, was that people would go until the pain stopped and then they'd quit. And that's not enough. And not enough at all. I mean,
Because it's a layer.
it's just a layer. It's just the top layer. And so you're just tickling with it. You're not really, you're dipping your toe into the water
Yeah.
to see what the temperature is. And so the goal then is to say to oneself, what's the beacon that's going to lead me through? That's bigger than pain. I'm moving away from my pain, but what am I moving toward? And that to me is pivotal in understanding how to turn this into a journey that is fully liberating no matter what the context is, no matter what's going on the outside.
And takes you through those challenging times, right? And I didn't even know that at the time. I just, again, once you see something you can't unsee, I just knew there was trauma that I didn't even know I had, and I'd been carrying it. And then it was like, oh, okay, if I don't fix this, they're going to get this. And this is
Exactly.
not, so it did become bigger than me. So I appreciate that awareness, because I think at the time it was just like, I don't want to feel like this. How do I stop feeling like this and hurting people, hurting myself? I want to be the best mom I can be. And so, yeah, so it's interesting how those things kind of trigger us into these crazy, epic healing journeys. And now I have, out of all of that, I have something to offer people. Kind of like
So
my
can
pain's
you,
been their gain.
do you have your book handy? Can you show what it
Yeah,
looks
I
like?
do.
Yeah.
Here, oh, wait, here, I'll grab it. Here it is. So this is the book.
Uh,
Yeah.
nice.
So it
Yeah.
ended up being a lot bigger than I anticipated. I think when you're writing a book, there's insecurities of, hey, am I going to put enough in here? Is there going to be enough content? And then I got it in the mail and I thought, okay, yeah, and like I
It's
said, I
substantive.
tried, yeah, and I tried to make it really, it's for anyone. I focused on leadership because at the end of the day, we're all leaders. And I think we all have the ability to lead others. And so it's for the corporate world, it's for the personal world. And like I said, a little personal about the journey, then the methodology, and then how to integrate. Now that you have the healing tools, you know how to use them. Now, how do you create a lifestyle with this?
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's the important piece.
To pull this together now in for the listeners, what would you like to leave them with? The memory of our conversation today, if you will?
I think having grace with yourself and allowing yourself to navigate life, as clumsy as that looks at times, and allowing yourself to feel good or bad. Often people think, oh, I don't want to be triggered. I want to heal my triggers so I never get triggered again. But the truth is, it's learning to work with your pain. It will always be there. And that's why it's a lifestyle. You figure, I compare things to pregnancy sometimes, where it took 9 months to get to a certain point. You're not going to wake up overnight and then be back to the way you were. Like you now have to transcend yourself and shift yourself so that you can wake up every day and still feel good about yourself. So I think with healing, it's one day at a time, but also just have some grace with yourself and accept
Mm.
yourself. And it's okay. It's okay that you have a million triggers. When you start to open up that floodgate, it's okay that you're triggered every moment of it. Everybody is. They're just not aware. So
Yeah.
it's just having that awareness and then doing something about it and saying, hey, you know what? I want to shift this.
Yeah.
And so I hope people know that there is a way to heal. They have to be willing to get to that place. Like you said, sometimes it takes a lot of pain, but to get to that place to say, hey, I'm going to stop this and I really want to do something. So when people are ready to start that healing or they're thinking about it, I think they have tools for them now. So yeah, so just be kind to yourself and it's okay to be triggered and just make note of it and know that the healing that you get out of it is worth the pain because you get so much gain out of it and it really does help you live a life where you feel sometimes that you're walking on water, but you have to go through the pain to get there. So that's the
Well said.
caveat.
Said. Miranda, is your book available on Chapters in Canada, Barnes and Noble, and all the, how far distribution do you have there?
So it's on Amazon right now. I'm getting it into Barnes and Nobles and Chapters. So I'd say in the next week, I'll have it available on all those platforms. So right now, just Amazon in all countries and Kindle. And then we'll have it in the other two places.
Awesome. Thank you very
Yeah.
much for sharing what you've experienced and what you've developed from your experience with everyone. It's invaluable right now. And yeah, thanks for doing the work.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, no, I'm super excited. Love these conversations because they add to heightening the frequency. So it's wonderful. Thank you.